Welcome back. You are watching The Fix. I'm Karima Brown. As was expected, the President emphasized the need to grow our economy and to do so in an inclusive manner. He also touched on the monopolies and their hold on certain sectors, and this will have to end so that smaller players can enter into the fray. He also spoke about anti-corruption measures and giving the new NPA head, Shamila Batoy, special powers to crack down on those who loot from the state. Well, to focus on some of the economic issues, I'm joined by Ann Bernstein from the Center for Development Economics, and also joining us is Christo van der Rheede. He's the Deputy Director at AgriSA, who says that he's pleased that the President has provided some certainty as to how the type of land should be expropriated. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start with you, Mr. van der Rheede. Land is a hot political potato in this election. The EFF, of course, is saying that all land must belong to the state. The government's taking a different view. How optimistic is AgriSA that the President hit the right notes when it comes to land redistribution and the process it must follow to get to us to an inclusive economy?
Let me make it very clear. We are dead set against any alteration of Section 25 of the Constitution. It is not necessary to change it. It makes very explicit how the state can go about to expropriate land and what measures should be put in place to bring about land reform. And we are obviously in support of land reform. But what we are saying is that the state has failed in its duty to do it properly. Week after week, we learn about massive corruption, and a lot of reports also indicate that the state is at fault when it comes to land reform. We are very happy with the engagement with the President thus far. Our own President, Dan Kriek, sits on the advisory panel to advise the President. We're also very active behind the scenes to get involved in the development of land for agricultural purposes. Now, I'm been visiting places all over the country, and it's absolutely astounding to see the vast amounts of land available for agricultural purposes. What is happening when the land is not being cultivated and developed? People flee en masse to towns and to other provinces where there's economic activity. So I'm very happy that the President has identified state land, also the land in tribal and communal areas, because that is very good land for agricultural purposes. And then the focus on housing. People are migrating to cities. It's a natural phenomenon. It's happening all over the world. So let us build our cities, expand our cities. Where's the plan for urban housing, and especially to house the youth?
Absolutely. Peter?
Yeah, you make the point that you're dead set against land expropriation or changing the Constitution. Do you agree that the Constitution does allow currently Article 25 for expropriation without compensation?
There's an article in Section 25 that makes it very, very clear. Okay. Nothing should stand in the way of the state to bring about land.
Can I just ask you this then? If there were a sentence that simply made it clearer, what would be the problem with that?
I think this is a political problem. We've seen how the Zuma camp during the previous conference came up with this concept, and how it created a lot of division within the ANC. It was an attempt to undermine or derail.
But the problem is that we have the prospect of a reasonably sensible government now for the next couple of years, but it has a political problem to get over on Article 24. On Article 25, does it matter if it includes a sentence simply making more specific what we all think it means?
Well, you can utilize the expropriation bill for that.
Well, exactly. So it's there, and so you could simply say that it was according to the expropriation bill. Yeah. Would you object to that?
No, certainly. I mean,
but that would be a change to Article 25.
Not necessarily, I think.
But you'd have to say it. You'd have to refer to the expropriation bill.
Yeah, but Section 25 makes provision for that.
Oh, we'll make provision for
Yeah.
it.
And let me bring you in here. You are obviously focused on the whole question of jobs and the economy, and of course also the development of small business. We've seen the President speak about breaking the hold of monopolies, bringing in new entrants, but often bringing in new entrants hasn't been problem-free. And because we've had state capture, in many instances, this has just been a quick fix to the ATM. The contracts aren't properly in place. There's no due diligence that's being done. And of course, the idea of building a class of entrepreneurs and of small businesses has gone awry, largely not because the idea is a bad one, but because the administration was so poorly, developed.
Well, I think it's a number of things. So it's important to note that the number of small enterprises in South Africa is going down and not up. And it's almost in inverse correlation to the amount of money and talk that we hear about how the state is going to create small businesses. I don't believe that. I don't think people who've never run businesses can help other people run businesses. You have to look at the business environment. I'm in favor of a much more competitive economy, and I think sector by sector one could be looking at how you could open this up to new entrants. So we must get rid of barriers for new entrants. But I think the concentration on incubation hubs in the SONA and these industrial parks we're going to revive is the wrong approach. I think you've got to say, how do we open this economy up for more and more firms? I think Ricardo Hausman, who was here in December and January advising the Minister of Finance, has put it very well. He said South Africa spends far too much time attacking the firms at the top and far too much time worrying about the firms we have and far too little time thinking about the firms we don't have. And that means you've got to get rid of regulations. You've got to think about the impact of BEE and how it's applied on smaller firms. So we have to deal with some tough issues. We must stop sort of having the slogans and we're all in favor of this, but nothing ever happens. In fact, the situation gets worse. So I think that there are two issues here. The one, in the SONA, I was looking for something on skilled immigrants who would help drive the economy. And again, as Ricardo Hausman has said, this is the $100 bill lying on the sidewalk. Someone else has paid for them. We should bring them in. They can be entrepreneurs. They'll be doctors. They'll be innovators. We didn't do that. I think that's a big problem. We've run out of skills in this economy. We've hit a sort of barrier. And if we were to move beyond our terrible economic growth rate, we're short of skills. And the pipeline for that is very bad. So we've got to bring in new skills, new entrepreneurs, new ideas, and we've got to make our economy more open.
So that's a whole new approach to immigration, though, surely. I mean, you've simply got to just wipe it all away.
And you've got to,
if you've got skills and you want to come and work in South Africa,
you've got to say this is really important. And across the world, we're not just going to say we're open. We're going to actively go out and recruit skills, not just the famous scarce skills, which is a crazy concept, but all the skills we can find. Anyone with skills who wants to come into South Africa who's not a crook, we want them.
Well, and one of the things that the President did emphasize is the fact that we need to release barriers, particularly in intra-Africa trade. I mean, he's been a big supporter of people coming in and getting visas on arrival. But there's been, a disjuncture between what he says and what is being done. He's in Addis Ababa right now as we speak to deal with some of these situations. But the issue of smaller entrants or of different people coming in, obviously also needs to address developmental issues. We can't just have a situation where everybody can come in and then you perpetuate the same inequality that we have right now.
Well, if you're concerned about inequality, I think there are two big priorities. The one is growth, and a much more labour-intensive growth in the society, which we have to not just say, we have to actually look at how we do it in terms of manufacturing and elsewhere. We need to change some laws, regulations and attitudes.
Give us some examples.
Well, I've just come back from Ethiopia. Here is a landlocked country, one of the poorest in the world, that has said, we're open for manufacturing. Please come. And they are getting investors. They're getting companies who told me, well, we're based in this place, but there isn't even a road to the port yet, but we'll contribute to that. South Africa, if you look at Port Elizabeth, for example, we have 2 underutilized ports, and we've been arguing for a long time, let's make this a special economic zone, let's go to China, and let's talk to investors on what they need. Now, I was intrigued in the ANC manifesto and in the President's speech that there is, let's have a zone for textiles and clothing manufacture. Maybe we'll do something bold. We need to experiment with what investors need.
And the Ethiopian example is a good one. Those people are there because the labor is cheaper than it is elsewhere. It's competitive.
I asked them. I met some of the big investors there. So somebody who represents big names, Calvin Klein, like 10 of these big names. I said, are you here only because of the cheap labor, which is very cheap? And he said, this isn't a workforce yet. People disappear after 2 weeks. It's like our mining owners used to complain. He said, as soon as we have a productive workforce, those wages are going to double. And within 2 years, he was arguing. So I said, well, why are you here? In the middle of a landlocked country. And I'm not 100% sure, but I eventually sort of thought, I decided that the main reason they were there was that the government really, really wanted them, and they said, what do you need? We'll do it.
Christo, I'm going to give you the last word. You've got a minute. In terms of your overall summation of the speech, what did you find encouraging, and particularly what spoke to your constituency?
I think the fact that the President is engaging with the private sector. We had the outbreak of foot and mouth in Limpopo. What happened the day after that? The industry, together with the government, came up with a plan. Secondly, it's critical that government also recognize the ability of commercial agriculture to turn the situation around. Government shouldn't become agriculturalists. Create the infrastructure. Give us the money. We've got the expertise. We can unlock the agricultural potential in this country like never before. But trust us and recognize us, and do not underestimate our ability, and stop blaming us for everything that goes wrong in this country.
Can you create new farmers?
Yes, certainly. We've been creating them. Along the Orange River, Kemus area, there are 75 colored farmers that are now exporting raisins to the Middle East. All over the country, there's so many case studies. We're producing now a document to showcase all of these successful case studies. And who's involved? Private sector, commercial agriculture, taking the hands of emerging farmers and giving them the right skills and access to market.
Guys, we've run out of time. This is obviously a conversation that can go on and on about. Thank you very much, Mr. van der Rheede from AgriSA, and also Ann Bernstein from the Center for Development Economics. While up next, we take a look at what your newspapers hold for you this weekend.